Welcome everyone to our channel, the first one about cryptocurrencies. Since it's the weekend, and of course the liquidity is lower here, so we can expect some bigger price movements. Maybe we won't be doing a market update today, so we'll wait to see how the markets open on Monday, and maybe record something on Monday at 2 p.m. Today, it's more of an educational video that will help you better understand our tool, which we've presented to you here. That is, our Trading Zone area is available on the Trading Zone Pro website. Right now, here on X, we have attractive promotions for the debut, so you can get it here with a discount code for 70 zlotys per month. Of course, we encourage you to subscribe to our media, that is on X and our YouTube channel. All new materials appear there, and today I'd like to present something like this to you here. As I said, this tool is designed to work in real market conditions. The market is very complex, so this will be updated live depending on what we manage to catch here. We want this tool to work not in synthetic conditions, but in real market situations. So for example, if I launch Bitcoin now, at this moment as I'm recording, it's 15:05:07. All this data, all these indicators are supposed to be live. Because this is supposed to be here, we would like this to be a zone for you so that you always have those few extra % chance here in the market. As you can see right now, it's turned off. We have the automatic trend. At the moment, our tool suggests that the trend is neutral. As for the market echo, meaning the statistics of similar conditions, there's a strong short recommendation, meaning that from this point, if such conditions occurred on the market, 70% of the time the price went down. The price dropped, 30% of the time it went up, so it's a strong recommendation as far as this tool is concerned. Echo short, market echo. Of course, our setup here is such that we need all these tools. Here we already have a slight divergence, which means we can assume that the downward trend is shifting to neutral and the setup score is at 23. And that's exactly what I'd like to talk to you about today, because now, what is our goal? Our goal, at least from my point of view as a trader here, is to determine the trend. That is, what trend we are in. Whether it's an upward trend or a downward trend, that's the primary piece of information I would really like to know, so that I could, by turning off my emotions, determine whether this is already the bottom or if this is already the top or if it really is. From this point, are we going to go up, or from this point, are we already going to start falling? So the main assumption is to determine the trend. And so when it comes to our trade, the trend FITEL panel works brilliantly. I'll show you this in a moment, how it looks here, but it seems to me that we have two remarks here. First of all, the test setup score. Of course, the ideal solution for us is AB. That is, after being calculated by all our algorithms, we have quite a high level of confidence that the entire configuration, meaning we have a high setup score here, we have trend feeder, and we have what's happening in the market. For example, Tommy Long, and we have a high setup score AB. There's a good chance that from this point, the market should simply move upward. However, based on the live tests we're currently analyzing, I've noticed here, keep in mind that the conditions I'm referring to can appear here quite rarely, so to speak. For instance, from my point of view, the main assumption was always to provide protection here. That was the primary goal, to ensure safety. You, as people who operate in this market, from losses. I think that right now we've tightened all the screws too much, and this could lead to good opportunities, good setups. You'll see, for example, I estimate 2 to 3 times a month. On the one hand, it makes sense because, as I said, we want to catch the whole move up and down, but I think it's a bit too strict. I'll show you in practice in a moment what I mean and how it would look. So I will definitely consider introducing something like this. Of course, we'll keep our conditions here, we'll stick to that. Our main priority is to eliminate all those false signals and give you maximum confidence, or as much confidence as possible, to potentially take a position. But I will introduce something like this. I don't know, I'll analyze the option, something like this, that of course what you need to look at, obviously, is not up for any discussion or negotiation, the trend. So if the trend filter works, that's great. It's been tested on literally thousands of trades. Here, for example, I'll show you what it looked like, just the basics. For example, here we analyzed actual trades. This was real. Bitcoin's movement, a downward trend, 1051 trades. We analyzed how these positions behave, and of course Excel isn't very attractive, but the main point is the substantive value. The point is, what is our success rate if we take risks? 50% of our capital. What is it when it is 25%? What is it when it is 10%? And what is it when it is 5%? What about when it's 3% of capital, depending on the leverage used? What did we mean by success rate? Success rate for us means that we opened a position throughout this entire downward trend. Maybe we'll break it down for you in more detail somewhere else. We had a really good example on futures to illustrate this. Maybe we'll come back to it. Unfortunately, we're pressed for time. So just as an example, I'm just guessing now, it was about this downward trend, I don't know, from January 9th. I'm just picking a date to January 18th. So we caught the entire downward trend and we opened a position every 5 minutes. So we had 1,051 opportunities where we could open this position. And if the position survived, we considered those assumptions, meaning a profitable or a losing position. And now, it depends. What is the ratio of positions? Here you have the ones that survived the stop loss, meaning how many positions survived during this downtrend. Yes, we calculated this effectiveness. I don't know if you understand what I mean here, right? So we also analyzed something like this here, and that's what I wanted to show you. Simply to say that here we had these assumptions, namely that we knew there was a downtrend. So from my perspective, and also remember that right now we are at such a point in the market. Now, for example, and now we don't know if it's 3 p.m. Here we have hourly candles. And right now we don't know if it's going to go, it's 2 p.m. because we're waiting for the entire candle to close. So we don't know if from this point we'll go up or down. We have a 50% chance. So now, back then, when we knew what the downtrend was, that's how things looked. Effectiveness, if we didn't know that, we could simply divide it in two. So from my point of view, it's very important to determine whether there's a downtrend or an uptrend. And above all, that's exactly what our panel is for here. Of course, the whole market as well. The status score and the entry, stop loss and take profit positions, they're simply there for less advanced users. To help determine where to open a position, meaning whether this is a good spot, for example, whether this condition right now is a good place to open a position. From my point of view, right now we're in the middle of the channel on the 1-hour chart for Bitcoin. We don't open positions in the middle of the channel. If we're going long, we open at the bottom of the channel. If we're going short, we open at the top of the channel. But that's something we know. Let's say people who already have a bit more experience. And I would also like this tool to be just as useful for beginner traders as it is for advanced traders. So I think that for me, or for more advanced traders, it's already very helpful. It's already helpful that we can determine the trend we're in. However, I think I need to make it a bit more make it accessible so that it's suitable for less advanced users as well, and that's basically what it's about. Sometimes I manage to do that, so I think that here it's not too high. Here storing is focused on this market echo, which leads to the fact that even when we have positions in a good spot, let's say small time frames for corrections, large time frames for determining the overall trend. And unfortunately, this score setup will appear very rarely because, for example, there might be only 3 or 4 such opportunities in a month. So theoretically, that's fine, but what happens if you miss those opportunities? So that would mean you'll have to constantly scan, constantly use it, right? And I think that's not the right approach. So for sure, we'll need some kind of second option here under, as I mentioned in the last video, what we're working on is Trader Guard. So we'll introduce a feature so you won't have to scan everything constantly in real time. Of course, the market is dynamic, so it's best to run it once a day. Check the hourly, the 4-hour charts, see if we're waiting or if we're taking action. But I also think we should have a bit of automation, so I'll try to implement some automation as well. Of course, I'll leave that as it is because it works really well. It's been tested, and here I have confidence that you're well protected, but I just want to loosen it up a little bit. Alright, we'll see what comes out of this for us. And what do I want to show today? Defining the trend, because that's how it is on the edge. This is the trading zone, the trade panel, and this is the trend filter, meaning the trend filter. Both a downward and upward trend are characterized by various short rebounds. That still doesn't change the fact that we're still in a downward trend. For example, here we have a couple of images like this. I've prepared them. If we're in a downtrend, meaning a bearish flag, as you can see, we also have rebounds within this downtrend. Here we have this pennant bearish, so there are always some rebounds as well. So now, how do we draw this out here? So now, someone might be, it might be confusing for someone that we're, I don't know, for example, we're in a downtrend, but the tool is showing to take a long position, I don't know, for example, a long signal. That's exactly because even in a downtrend, there are sometimes upward corrections. But I think it should be a bit clearer and a bit more understandable somewhere in there. So that's my first comment here. Since we've already made it available, it's for everyone. If you have any questions, of course, send us an email here. This video is actually a detailed response to several specific questions from our dedicated users who are currently utilizing our tool in their daily workflows. And I think they're valid. As I said, this tool is meant to be developed by us together with you as well. It is supposed to work in real market conditions. And that's why I imagine the development of this tool happening in this way through this kind of communication. If you notice anything, if you feel something is missing, write to us about it. We'll analyze it and present our possibilities, how we could potentially implement your suggestions, right? All right, what do I want to show you? I want to show you now that TrendFitter works very well. All right, I have prepared two charts here, Bitcoin and Ethereum. As I said, the main premise of our tool is a market without emotions. So we try, if we are taking a position, that is, we are taking a position, maybe let's put it this way. If we are looking for a trend reversal, then we eliminate. We are not looking for tops. We are not looking for bottoms. So here in this trend, for example, here we have a chart on TradingView. In this downtrend, we are interested in this particular section. We don't know where the top is, just like now. We don't know if this is the bottom. So I'll show you what we're going to wait for here, what we're looking for here, in order to possibly take a breakout position. But you get the idea. This is an Ethereum chart, and somewhere here we also have Bitcoin. So our goal is not to find the tops, not to find the bottoms, but to find the trend. So only when we have confirmation of this trend do we start considering opening a position. And now, as you can see, this trend zone itself works very well. And why am I showing you this here? Looking at this specific example right here, we have the current Ethereum price chart displayed on the screen. So here it is for you. Now I'll just go ahead and turn this off. Let's assume that we can consider the start of the trend to be Sunday, January 18th at 5 p.m. here. So from this point, the downtrend in ETH began. So from a level of, 3,200 to 3,300 down to 1,700. So as traders, this is the trend we'd want to catch. And now how exactly do we use our specific tool, for example? This particular trend first started back on January 18th. So now we will carefully move over to our designated zone. Trading zones are very good for identifying trends. Of course, use higher time frames to set up positions and lower time frames as well. But if we're talking about trends, it's best to use the hourly or 4-hour charts. So now as a trader, let's say, we're here now. A really great feature of our tool is the ability to go back to historical values. For example, we can pull up a daily chart. A daily chart for Ethereum, and let's go back here to, this is the 18th, or maybe we can even switch to the 4-hour chart here. I hope this is Ethereum and that it won't take too long, because what I really want to show you here is the point of this. So maybe we'll just take one daily candle. Let's make it something a bit more interesting. So it's like this. Although here we have the 4-hour chart. Okay, let's stick with the 4-hour chart. So we'll take Ethereum on the 4-hour time frame. A really great feature of our tool is that we can go back in time and see how these indicators looked, because here we already know what happened, right? So for example, in this zone, we're looking to take a short position, so our tool should indicate where it's best to enter that short position. So, okay, we're going back to January 16th at 1 a.m., which is still before the drop. We can either type in the date or select January 16th at 3 a.m., although I think 1 a.m. will probably be fine. All right, let's move on here to 1 a.m. so it doesn't take too long. Okay, at 1 a.m. We'll be taking over like this and doing analyses as well. So now here, if there's a big flip, you'll get an alert like this. And now the chart looks like this. I'll turn all of these off. I'll turn off 3 and focus just on the chart itself. And right now we're looking at this kind of chart. Our tool suggests a neutral trend when it comes to the market. Neutral. I'm not here. Let's see how it looks. January 17th. Oh, right, earlier, because we were also in an uptrend, right? So, for example, if we go back, to the 10th. And maybe this one, so I don't overcomplicate things here too much. What I want to tell you, to show you. Okay, here we go. Let's see what comes up next. Of course, everything is live, just like you will use it at home. Okay, 18. We have a neutral trend. 19. 1:15 a.m. Of course, this could be done in detail, but I want to show you somewhere how it will be. Oh, here we have it. We currently have a chart like this. And now the tool suggests an uptrend, an upward trend. From my point of view, that's also quite logical. Let's see 19, and this is 19. Let's see 20. And here we already have short only, so what do I want to show you most here? So from this point, the trend has changed for us, as you can see. That's why, as I mentioned, this set score can be misleading here, so of course I'll work on that. I want to show you how the determination of this short trend works, meaning we previously had a long trend there. It changed to short, market echo, and now we have a short with a high probability of a decline, meaning from this point there was a 70% drop. How do we draw it now? The chart, what happened from this point? Yes, as you can see, the chart dropped. So that's exactly what we want to do here. Now take a look at how this trend will change. That was the 20th. Now we'll do the 21st. 01. We still have a short. Maybe after 2 days we'll keep going. 23. We were still coming up short on the 28th and the 31st. We were definitely still short back then, right? And looking at the calendar right now, it is already February 7th. Yes, today is the 7th of February. It seems like right around here things got a little bit stagnant for us for a while. Looking at the numbers 7 and 2, it really shows the stall. The analysis is up to today. We have a short. That's why, as I mentioned in the previous video, this trend will change. So why am I so sure right now that I don't know? I mean, I'm sure I feel more confident, I feel calmer in this market because I simply have a tool that is able to, let's say, very well, very accurately determine when the trend simply changes. Now, if we go through, now historically this whole week, that is from 1 o'clock, at 02.03, we are currently still in a continuing, consistent downward trajectory. Despite this rebound here, despite this uptick, because the trend goes like this, this is the trend. Let's assume here we have some kind of attempt to break through. This is a downward trend. At some point it will turn into an upward trend. Just like here, let's say, here was an upward trend. Let's say something like that over there. At some point it will turn into a downward trend. The lines might get a bit tangled up here, but just so you know, this is the trend. This already gives us a lot of information about the situation we're currently in on the market. And that's exactly what our tool is meant for, among other things, to help you avoid making decisions hastily. So, for example, those decisions will be made when there are some statistical or technical conditions. This is strongly suggesting that there could very well be a significant trend reversal here. Now, if we take a closer look at the 4-hour chart for Ethereum, we're carefully analyzing the price action in real time. As you can still see, on the 4-hour chart, we still have a downward trend. On the daily chart for Ethereum, the downward trend continues, but from this point, a long position on the market could also see some kind of rebound. So that's how we should interpret it at this moment. As I said, I want to protect everyone here as much as possible, myself included, of course, all of us. But I feel like I've tightened the screws a bit too much. I believe that right now, most of your time will be spent in front of the chart. Not to make money on these charts, but practically just waiting for a position. Now, what will happen? Well, for example, let's take these fours here. We have this chart, Ethereum on TradingView. So here, let's assume, I don't know, from here. So from January 16th, we're waiting for a trend change here, right? Let's say this was the upward trend and we're waiting for a trend reversal. So what would that look like? So starting from the 16th of January at 1600 hours and 1 minute for a total of 4 hours, let us get started now. 1 o'clock at night, long trend. 1 o'clock at night, so let's say, here it was like this. If we zoom in, let's assume that at 1 o'clock at night, from this point, of course, you could have taken a position here, a long position. We'll move forward every 10 hours, right? 10. It is unfortunately still far too long. 19. It is definitely still much too long. I really think we need to shorten it down quite a bit more. 16, 17, now 4. Well, obviously maybe it's a bit too monotonous and it's not super interesting, but I also want to show you the point and what we're working on here, right? So now, 17, January 17th, 1, 11 back, still long. 22, right? Actually, I could test this somewhere else instead of doing it live, because with these videos, still long, 18, 02, but you'll be doing it like this at home too, right? It's not like you have some kind of to operate in specific situations. And now look, 18. The trend has shifted to neutral. And this is the strongest signal right here. The setup works great in this kind of transition. A transition from signal, long, neutral, short. Damn, you would just have to catch it, right? So it would look more or less like what I'm doing here now, and you keep watching all the time, right? So, I don't know, you let it run, you have a short, you let the short run, and then you let it go, you have neutral, and here you start observing to see if, so to speak, the conditions for a theoretical change and trend reversal are occurring here. Okay, so January 18th at night, 18th of January at night. Where are we on the chart? Here we are. So here the long trend that is beginning has turned into neutral. Okay, that is number 10. Neutral. And now, moving on to number 19. Neutral. 23. Neutral, but we also have a lot of volume explosions. You also have an alarm. Okay, we'll see 19 o'clock, the second. Neutral, fifth. He rounded, of course, as he writes, I don't know. Fifth, we have a 4 in the database, so it rounds 14. 19. Next, we are going to examine a neutral scenario. For this specific example, we will take a look at the data from February 20th, 2006. As you can clearly see on the chart, we now have a significant number of different technical indicators that seem to have completely reversed their previous momentum. So practically speaking, we found ourselves in a situation where the overall market trend underwent a major change, shifting all the way from a long position to a neutral stance and finally moving into a short position. And right now we are in a situation here that is, this is the hour, January 20th at 5 o'clock. How does the 4-hour chart look? Maybe I'll leave Bitcoin for now because this would take too long, but just so you have it marked. So now, January 20th, 5 o'clock, January 20th, 5 o'clock. So this is basically exactly here. So yes, as if we set it up right here. At this point, the trend has changed from neutral to short. And if we also draw the chart from this spot, as you can see, we have a downward trend. And that's actually the main purpose of this trade panel, meaning the Trading Zone Pro area. It's simply supposed to tell you when a trend change occurs, because that's already a big help. If we know when the trend changes from downward to upward or vice versa, it simply gives us a big chance to either make some money from the market or just invest our funds at the right place. Of course, we can also make mistakes. The tool can make mistakes too. Nobody knows whether the chart will go up or down. The point is that we shouldn't be guessing, because now, for example, you do a backtest analysis, you don't have our tool, you see a chart like this, then you're just guessing. You know how? Well, for me, after correction, it should go up. But as you can see, it went down. So the point is for our tool to eliminate this guesswork, and that's the main goal of this tool. I think it's already working very well. It's been analyzed very thoroughly on, well, I wouldn't be exaggerating if I said thousands of trades and definitely over 10,000 trades, and it works really well. Now, the main thing we'll be working on is precisely opening the position and these conditions here, because the conditions remain unchanged, meaning a high setup score, market echo from this point, of course, in line with the trend. And then we can consider opening a position, but such conditions may occur quite rarely, just like I'm testing here now, and it happens a few times a month. And what if you miss it? Meaning you miss that moment of transition from trend, long, neutral, short. Then you might simply miss the entire downward trend as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Here, I'll introduce something so you don't have to, so to speak, sit over these charts, and that's the direction I'd like to go. All right then, so now let's say this will be a slight downturn in the market. Let's see how we look on the 4s on Ether. Do we have any probability here? As you can see, we still have a short, the 7th from the 6th. Well, yesterday it was a short, so I guess there's no point in analyzing the stock. Unfortunately, as for a reversal or some kind of rebound, at this moment, unfortunately, we do not anticipate one. We don't have any indicators, neither historical, even the historical ones are strongly downward, nor statistical, nor any technical ones that would suggest a trend reversal is coming at this moment. We'll see when it comes. And now, as you can see, this chart was moving around here. Likewise, let's assume this chart will also be moving around here. Of course, I don't know. We'll check it in real time and see what happens on Monday. And what am I getting at? We won't catch the peaks and we won't catch the bottoms. Of course, that's also where there's the greatest chance, so to speak, for profit in the futures market, but also the greatest risk when it comes to those peaks and bottoms. That's why the goal of our tool, the goal of our entire Stuffy Trading Zone, is simply to eliminate those emotions. And in my opinion, the first step to eliminating emotions is to stop trying to catch the peaks and stop trying to catch the bottoms. And that's already working really well right now. So, all right, just so it doesn't drag on, you know what? What do we want to do next? Of course, you need to learn a bit about how to work with this tool because, as I said, historical values work well on smaller time frames. So, I don't know, let's take the 1 hour chart. The 1 hour chart, when it comes to, you see the 1 hour chart, we have a neutral signal. So there's something subtle going on here, something here for us. On a small time frame, it's possible you'll see a little bounce, but such a small bounce on a small time frame doesn't necessarily indicate anything. Because here too you have a bounce in a downtrend, but it doesn't necessarily suggest a trend reversal. To confirm a trend reversal, you simply need confirmation of the trend reversal. And the best way out of a channel, the best exit from a channel, is breaking out of the channel to the upside. So how do we approach this now? If we draw a channel, we have a channel, and if we get higher lows than higher highs, higher lows, then we can cautiously start talking about some kind of reversal, simply a trend reversal, so that's how it looks. So from my point of view, I am very satisfied with how the trend identification works. However, when it comes to presenting the moment when we can open a position, I think that if someone is a more advanced trader, it already gives them a lot. But if someone is a less advanced trader, and we also wanted to target our tool at such users, I think we need to work a bit more on its intuitiveness. To review something here, this tool, and as I noticed here, I think it's too much. Let me show you, maybe on the 4-hour chart, what I mean. When it comes to these percentages, for example, 36, 63, well, maybe these are actually quite large. Here too, I'm not entirely satisfied with this high, medium, and low, high, neutral, and low. If I remember correctly, we have these indicators, and it seems to me that, I don't know, even a deviation of 3 to 4% causes the indicator to change from neutral to medium. So, for sure, these statistical and historical conditions also need to be refined. I think the trend works really well. Of course, we'll see if we get confirmation. If the trend actually reverses and we detect it, I'll be very satisfied with this tool. And the setup score, I think it's a bit too strict, just a bit too strict, so you could gently allow level C to be considered for trading. But as I said, this of course remains as our base, our core. If you have a highly effective setup trend filter here and it's perfectly aligned with the market direction, in my opinion, you are exceptionally well protected against potential risks. From my point of view, and based on the various experiences we've extensively analyzed throughout this session. But of course, we'll work on it further. And also, coming back to this, I'll make a separate video about how leverage can kill you. Your positions. Now, for example, look, you're risking 50% of your capital. Of course, this is Excel. It's not some super advanced Excel sheet. But the idea is actually pretty cool. I'll make a better video where this will be presented more clearly, but for example, if you're risking half of your capital, what kind of investment is that? Risking half your capital, that's with leverage of 100 or even 200 times. You have, when you risk half and you knew the trend, so we knew that this is a downward trend, so you were taking a position in a downtrend, you have a 44% chance with 100 times leverage of losing half your capital.